Building on my recent videos that explored the history and current landscape of both surgical and non-surgical cosmetic groups, as well as the growth dynamics of the injectable market, I wanted to share some interesting insights around pricing trends that I've observed over the past 30 years. This topic often comes up in conversations with new clinic owners that I coach. I like to ask them what they think one area Botox cost when it was first launched in 1994. Some of them weren't even born then, so I guess it's not the fairest question, but still, their guesses usually range from around £50 to £90. And that's understandable. Most people instinctively account for inflation and assume prices back then were much lower than today's rates. However, as I mentioned in my previous video on the launch of Botox by Boots, prices for one area were similar in 2002, remaining steady at around £200 since its introduction 8 years earlier. Over the 2000s, as more new clinics entered the market, we noticed that prices were starting to move lower, not just for Botox, but for many other popular non-surgical treatments. We started to monitor this through the Consulting Room website, and in 2013 we published a survey of 60 clinics comparing prices charged from 2009 to 2013. It's a busy table, but in most cases we noted a small decline in prices quoted. Then in 2015, we conducted a survey of 189 Consulting Room members to compare pricing for 1, 2 and 3 areas of toxin across the UK. While regional price differences weren't particularly significant, the results clearly showed that average prices were lower than those charged 2 decades earlier. The deflationary trend in pricing appears to have continued. Looking at current pricing from Therapy, the UK's largest clinic chain offering non-surgical aesthetics, prices seem even lower in April 25 than they were a decade earlier. Interestingly, their pricing structure accounts for the fact that men typically require more toxin than women. This approach helps them maintain more consistent gross profit margins across genders. However, when evaluating the long-term deflation in the price of services like Botox or botulinum toxin, it's also crucial to consider how inflation affects profit margins. Until recently, inflation over the past 30 years has remained relatively low compared to the preceding 30-year period. But while inflation may seem gradual year to year, its cumulative impact is substantial, steadily reducing the purchasing power of money. I was born in 1964, and over the next 30 years leading up to my involvement in the launch of Botox, average prices for goods and services increased 8-fold according to the Bank of England inflation calculator. In contrast, during the subsequent 30-year period, average inflation was much lower, but prices still doubled, which remains a significant shift, even if less dramatic. If Botox pricing had simply kept pace with inflation over the past 30 years, the average cost for one area today would be around £400. Yet in reality, most clinics are charging £200 or less. It's interesting to note that one of the most competitive service industries in the UK is the hairdressing and personal grooming sector. With multiple establishments on nearly every high street, prices in this space appear to have increased broadly in line with inflation over the past 30 years. To explore whether any clinics have adjusted their toxin prices in line with inflation, I asked ChatGPT to identify the highest price for a single area Botox in the UK. It highlighted Cosmetic Skin Clinic, which charges £275. After conducting several more searches for wrinkle or anti-wrinkle injection prices, I found that Dr. Rita Rakes, who runs a premium clinic in Knightsbridge, surpassed Cosmetics with a price of £285 for one area. However, drawing on my own industry knowledge and experience, I found that former apprentice winner Dr. Leah Totten charges £300 for one area. And finally, I recalled a consultant dermatologist I'd known since the 1990s, and I discovered he is charging £450, exceeding the inflationary impact that the last 30 years should have on toxin prices. So in summary, while the cost of the toxin itself may not have increased, practitioner and admin staff wages and fixed overheads like rent and utilities have risen sharply. As a result, most clinics are earning less profit from toxin treatments today than they would have done in the late 1990s. Unfortunately, this trend isn't limited to toxin treatments. It applies to many services offered by aesthetic clinics today. As a result, running a profitable clinic has become more challenging than it was 20 years ago. To succeed, clinic owners must have a deep understanding of the gross margins for each treatment they provide, know exactly how much they can allocate towards marketing to acquire new clients, and also be confident in how they raise prices and communicate value. All of this must sit within a solid business model and growth strategy to ensure long-term profitability. And if you're struggling with any of this, whether you're just starting out or have been running your clinic for 20 years or more, my 10 weeks to transform your aesthetic clinic's future online course is designed to give you the clarity and strategy you need to move both your business and personal life forward with real lasting results. And if it doesn't, you'll get your money back, guaranteed. If you'd like more information, visit ronmyers.co.uk. Oh, and please put any comments below this video. I always appreciate other people's views on topics that I cover.